Now that you've understood that, now understand riba. Riba is whatever is outside of there. You're being charged money for money. The interest that you're being charged on the mortgage that you get, which you shouldn't be getting, but we're talking in realities because this occurs. I've got a mortgage, okay? I've got a £30,000 mortgage because my house is $40,000, the mortgage is $30,000. Okay, in this transaction, what goods outside of the principal, house is worth $40,000, riba is $30,000. What service has been rendered for this? And there's been no service rendered. What goods have been levied? There haven't been any. We are charging you money on money. Well, what's the paper money that you have? Those are promissory notes. Those are not bills. Those are promissory notes. That's nothing. That's nothing. You're being charged air for air. So how far can riba go? Well, it can be inordinate. Someone can put £1,000% interest. You've seen what happens. Someone gets behind in their house payments. They're told, if you do not pay within the next 2 weeks what you're behind on, we will charge you such and such for your back payments to be 1,000% interest exponentially every day. You know what's going to happen. You're never going to be able to get out of the hole. You'll never get out of it. So whenever you deal with any transaction, Muslim or Kafir, a debt is a service rendered or goods levied. If someone tells you that you owe them something in any transaction, you owe me this, okay, have you rendered me a service? Well, no. Have goods been exchanged? Has there been some sort of levy? No. Have we agreed this transaction? No. Then I don't owe you anything. Then I don't owe you anything. This is why riba is so insidious, because there's no limit to it. Goods levied, there's a limit to things. Services rendered, only based upon how many services you can render. But when you start charging riba on things, it won't stop. And there's no way to stop it, to the point to where you forget how much money is in circulation, because they're trying to cover the money that's in circulation with the riba, which is trying to cover how much they can actually pay. Let's give a very quick understanding of what happened when the Prophet ﷺ came back to Medina. This is 630 AD, Kafir calendar, Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. How does riba circulate and keep an economy going? You'll have gold or silver or platinum or any physical standard. Let's say you have $1 billion worth of that. The Meccans had a huge amount of gold. This is our gold. But we're charging and lending out money. So they were doing what? They were writing promissory notes. The bearer of this note has the right to request full payment of his remittance. You notice that? Go look at your pound coins. Look at your notes. Look at your dollar bills. Oh, so this is not really money. Of course it's not money. They're telling you it's a promissory note. You go to the bank, say, I want 20 pounds worth of gold. They look at you. They have security come and show you out. Why? Because that's finished. Now, what had happened originally is, when they would give you this amount, you would go to the treasury or go to the Meccan treasury and say, I have agreed to sell this many camels for this much gold. You would turn in the note, they would see the signature, the documentation, how much you were to be given, and turn over the amount. But then you start lending on interest. So now there's principal added. So instead of 50 gold pieces, you owe 50 gold pieces times 5% interest. So now, before you receive that principal of what's given, you have to pay that man something, and then he gives you back what's yours. Now, that starts to increase. To pretty soon, you have more debt in circulation than you have a physical commodity before you have physical money. So if you have 2 billion, let's say you have 2 billion pounds worth of debt in circulation and you've only got 700,000 gold, let's say all those people ask for their debt back. You can't pay it back, can you? There's not enough money in the treasury, is there? So what do? You take out a loan from another nation. Well, wait a minute. How can you take out a loan? You don't even have any. Well, you start selling off assets in your country. You start selling off assets. I've got to be able to get loans to pay for the loans. So you're taking out loans to pay for the interest on the loans that you took out. So the Prophet ﷺ comes back to Mecca, destroys Meccan society, completely devastates it, and says, that's it now. No more riba. You only owe the principal of your loans. That ruined Abu Sufyan. That ruined everyone else who made money off of it, ruined them. He comes to Medina. You didn't think he did the same thing with the children of Israel? He ruined their economy. He completely destroyed their economy. And he mentioned that the same people whose economy that was destroyed, i.e. the children of Israel, would come back again. And they would be in such a situation that, in the hadith in Sahih al-Jami', that people who weren't even involved in interest would be hit and covered in some of the dust of riba. You're not even trading in riba, but you're hit with the dust of riba. Why? Because of other people trading in it, involving themselves in it, building corporations off of it. You have whole organizations that are shadow companies that have built themselves up off of riba, and there's nothing there. There's nothing in Fort Knox. There's nothing in the Federal Reserve. All the gold is gone. They're doing nothing but trading in promissory notes. There's nothing there. So the poor guy, he's bought his house using promissory notes, bought his car using promissory notes, got a 401k plan using promissory notes, he's got his dental plan using promissory notes, he's got his medical care, all this other business. And so what happens? The company that he had for his car, his house, his business, everything else, the society hits a dip and it dissolves. The guys that actually have control over all the promissory notes and the debt that's owed, they decide to call in the debt. So what happens? Can that guy pay? Of course he can. He doesn't have the money. That's the whole reason why he tried to buy a house, was to get on the property ladder. Isn't that what you do? He's got nothing. So in the space of the 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, families you think are middle class that are well-to-do are poor. They don't have anything. Ask yourself, how much do you really have? If you're stacking up promissory notes and making all these loans and everything and paying finance and everything, you've got nothing. They come for your stuff and it's gone within seconds. This is why the Prophet ﷺ destroyed these things. This is why Allah destroyed it. Because people who really don't have wealth become wealthy. Because of promissory notes, debt. They get paid because of debt. That's why this has been attacked. Now, Imam Ibn Al-Jawzi, rahimahullah, he continues by saying, quote, "And so the Exalted has said, let it not be the case that any one of you refuses to write down a debt when Allah has given this person the ability to write, as said by Sa'id ibn Jubair. Imam al-Sha'bi has said, writing down debts is fard kifaya, just like jihad. If someone fails to do it, it becomes fard ayn on all those around until it is done. One group of people must be able to write down debts to be sure that oppression will not become widespread." The second principle to keep in mind is, just as Allah ordered us to fulfill His rights, debts should be written down. And this is one of the rights of Allah, that some debts should be written down. And when the Exalted One has said, so that the debts are written down, and for the one who has a deficiency. Now, the person that may have a mental deficiency is of 4 types. The person who has a mental deficiency could be ignorant about money and has no idea how to spend or how to save money. So he's a spendthrift. The second type of person that has a mental deficiency is the young child, or the woman who is not an earner, for they don't know how to allocate wealth. And thirdly, the small child. For the small child has no wealth of his own other than that which is held in trust. And fourthly, the one who spends without paying attention to what is being spent, so he does no bookkeeping. As stated by Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la. All of these points have been narrated by Mujahid, Ibn Jubayr, Al-Hasan Al-Basri, Al-Dhahhak, and As-Sudai. Now, as for the person that's mentioned in the ayah that's weak, there are three types of people that are weak. One is the person who has either a disability or he can't speak because of mental or physical retardation. This is said by Ibn Abbas and Ibn Jubayr. It is also mentioned by Mujahid and As-Sudai. Secondly, it's the person that suffers from retardation, but he can speak. But he suffers from some sort of retardation that hampers his accurate dispensing of his wealth. And thirdly, that he is small as a child. And again, this was said by Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la. Now, it should be understood that the one who the debt is being sought from, the person trying to recover his debt has a right to seek it. And the person being sought, his right is to give the debt. And it should be written down. And the scribe should not write down less or more than what's been dictated. He should be just. Because to do otherwise would cause oppression. Now, another category of person is the one who may not be able to rectify things himself, in which case he will need a guardian. Now, this means that that person's right can only be fulfilled by his guardian watching out for him. As said by Ibn Abbas, Ibn Jubayr, Al-Rabi' Ibn Anas, Muqatil, and Ibn Qutaybah. Secondly, is that the wording in the ayah is also referring to the right that's due to the person, which is the right that debts should be written down and reduced to writing. As said by Al-Dhahhak Ibn Zayd and Az-Zujaj. Now, the question that comes may be, how is it that someone making a claim on a debt can be accepted when the debt requires writing down things and witnesses? Without reducing things to writing, it becomes more difficult to confirm the truthfulness of a claim of debt. Now, someone must be sure and be just, which means that they write down what has been dictated to them, and that there should be 2 witnesses from your men. Now, there's 2 things that are in reference to, that these men should be free, as said by Mujahid. They can't be prisoners or slaves from battle. And number 2, that they are Muslim, as stated by Az-Zujaj and Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la. So from the beginning of this ayah, when Allah talks about procuring a debt, the speech that's being given is to believers and not unbelievers. And if there aren't two men, meaning two male witnesses, then there can be a man and two women. And these are people who we are pleased to have them as our witnesses. Ibn Abbas says these are people of virtuousness and righteousness, who are either scholarly or otherwise, so that when one goes astray, the other one reminds the other. So when the two women who are standing in witness, one of them reminds the other. And one of them will make sure that the other remembers the details, and that the details are not forgotten. So whenever someone forgets, someone else is there to remind them. Now, the meaning of the witnessing of these two, in place of the witnessing of one man being two women, this is understood from the ayah. But what is its ruling? And what is the ruling by meaning one man and two women? What if there is a situation? For example, it was mentioned by Sufyan ibn Uyayna and narrated from Al-Asma'i, from Abu Amr. And it's a preferred ruling of Al-Qadi Abu Ya'la. And some have rejected it, like Ibn Qutayb and others. But they've said that if there is no man present, then women are witnesses in that affair. But some have said that the witness of these two women in this particular case is not unless there is one man with them, because there's the possibility of forgetfulness, or one will need to remind the other. Close quote. Now the question that comes, and this is the longest ayah in the Quran, it's a page. Now the question that comes is, oh look, women's witness is only worth half of that of a man. Oh, what will we do now? Well, we have to look at things technically, because again, revealed law is revealed law. And we're not studying English law, we're not studying Afrikaans law, we're studying what Allah revealed. Now, what do we mean then when we're talking about this? The perspective of this ayah is to do with debt. Because in the case when you're talking about procured debt, the reason why you would say one woman needs to remind another is because in cases of procured debt, most women would not be witnesses of that, because most women, the general principle is women would not be breadwinners. The man would be the breadwinner. And the people that are here, you have the scribe, which could be either male or female. You have the scribe, which could be either male or female. But the women that are there, how could they be witness to the debt being procured? Because most of the women would not be involved in the transaction. Because this transaction that has to do with one man and another party would be a transaction that's totally connected with bread earners, breadwinners, people that are transacting in the society. Now, women are in the society and they're transacting, but most of the time they're not transacting in men's transactions. Most of the time that's not being done. Secondly, this ayah is used regarding court cases. Why? Because it has to do with judicial cases. You may not be aware of this, but in many instances, not because their witness doesn't have veracity, but female witnesses aren't used in judicial cases where someone could lose their life or be punished. Because one of the things that the witness does is the witness makes sure that the penalty's been carried out. And a lot of the judges would rather not have that happen. Because in cases where people receive the death penalty, cases where people are hung, where cases have their hand amputated, or cases where it's a female judge and she has to hand out the death penalty, or she has to do the lashing. Well, does she touch the offender? Does she not touch the offender? There's a lot more in this ayah than people let on. Now, if you look at this ayah, what about other cases where it has to do with sighting the moon or other things like that? Yes, the witness of one woman would be sufficient in certain cases, yes. So it's not a hard and fast rule that we say, oh yes, in this ayah is the clear proof that women, get out of the way. It's not proof of that at all. It's proof of this particular ruling in this particular context.